Welcome to Defenders TV Podcast, episode 38, about Jessica Jones, episode 8, aka WWJD. Welcome back to Defenders TV Podcast. This is episode 38 of our podcast. We're talking about Jessica Jones, episode 8, aka WWJD. I thought this was World War Jack Daniels, since there was lots of whiskey references.
This was a massive bender, basically.
That's what I thought, but Chris corrected me.
Well, I'm not going to say I corrected you. I more than pointed you in the right direction.
Which is?
What would Jessica do?
There you go. So thank you very much for that, Chris. I'm Derek. I'm one of your hosts. Welcome back to Defenders TV Podcast.
Hi, I'm John, one of your other hosts.
And I'm Chris, rounding out the group.
Yes. Delighted to have us all back for this episode. Good one this week.
Really good, yeah. Really creepy, really good. Lots going on.
Definitely.
Loving Kilgrave in this, big time.
Yeah, and I'm putting one out to the writers who will mention later. This one was a well-scripted, emotional turmoil?
Yeah.
Yeah, emotionally turmoiled. Over all the other episodes we've got so far, this is the one where I flip-flop more than flip-flop in the beach.
Ooh, interesting.
Look at that for a reference.
A little point of business before we kick off into this week's episode, or into this week's discussion about episode 8. We mentioned on last week's episode about how our coverage will continue for Jessica Jones because of our next show that we'll be covering is Agent Carter, coming out in January in the UK and Ireland, as well as in the US. It's been confirmed that the episode, according to geektown.co.uk, who release when episodes of TV shows are going to be coming out, they've confirmed that the premiere of season 2 of Agent Carter will air in the UK on January 24th on Fox, which is about 6 days after it airs in the US. So we actually do have enough time, I think, to cover all of our episodes of Jessica Jones and continue to release them once a week on a Tuesday, as we've been releasing our episodes so far. So that's good news.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So we won't be giving Christmas presents of 2 episodes over the Christmas period now.
It's a Christmas present to me because I don't have to edit 2 episodes a week now, which is good.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good.
So thank you very much, Fox, for not bringing forward the release date of Agent Carter. I'm delighted about that.
No, we like having you work. You're not getting Christmas off. I'm sorry.
Yes. In the spirit of Dickensian Christmas, you will work until your bloody hands can work no longer.
Well, I'm glad that Fox don't agree with you, so I'm delighted about that. If you want to subscribe to our podcast, make sure you get all of our episodes of Jessica Jones and obviously season 2 of Agent Carter and every other Marvel show that we'll be covering next year. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes by going to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes, or subscribe in any good podcast catcher for Android like Beyond Pod, Podcast Addicts, and also in Stitcher. Just search Defenders TV Podcast to find us.
Absolutely. And if you want to share your thoughts on any of the episodes of Jessica Jones in this season 1, or on our podcast, the things that we discuss about, then send in your feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. Or, of course, you can send in thoughts, comments, discuss things through our Facebook group and page, and of course on Twitter. On Facebook, just search Defenders TV Podcast, and on Twitter, just go to @DefendersCast and get involved with everyone else who's chatting about this fantastic series so far.
Absolutely. We have some poll results later on about who the best Marvel villain is so far, and we'll have some feedback on our most recent episodes as well, coming up after our discussion of episode 8 of Jessica Jones, aka WWJD, or What Would Jessica Do? This episode was written by Scott Reynolds, who has worked on Dexter. He did about 9 episodes of Dexter. And one of the things we didn't talk about earlier on is that the showrunner of Iron Fist was announced this week, which was Scott Buck, who also showrun for Dexter. So he may have worked with Scott Reynolds previously in his role over there on Dexter.
Yeah, this is like fantastic news, because not only did he do Dexter, but he also did one of my favorite shows, which was 6 Feet Under. Mm-hmm. For me, a really important show for me. I really loved all 6 seasons of that show. It was just great for me. A very important series.
A fabulous show. Absolutely fabulous show. So it basically means that Michael C. Hall, who was the main actor in both of those shows, Dexter and 6 Feet Under, is going to be playing Iron Fist, really, doesn't it?
It can only lead to that. Absolutely.
Interesting.
Or maybe a big bad. It'd be good to see him really bad. Because obviously Dexter, you empathise with him to an extent, you know, a serial killer with a social conscience, but like this would be great to see him all out evil with no consequences.
Absolutely.
Slightly like Kilgrave to an extent.
Yeah, another show that we will obviously be covering is Iron Fist in the future on this show. But back to Jessica Jones. This particular episode, again, was directed by Simon Callan Jones. John, do you want to tell us what we got in this episode?
Sure. After her unexpected release from the police precinct, Jessica experiences a strange homecoming, courtesy of Kilgrave, as she is made to spend time with him at her childhood home. Learning of his unusual and troubled childhood, Jessica looks to reverse Kilgrave's damaged personality, thinking that she might be able to mend him. She seeks the advice of Trish, who is concerned with not only Jessica's changed circumstances, but also Simpson's increasingly obsessive and secret behaviour towards Kilgrave. Elsewhere, matters of a broken heart reach a tipping point as Hogarth's messy divorce with her estranged wife plumbs a new depth as Hogarth gets desperate. However, as Jessica returns to help Kilgrave back at their house, Simpson, a bodyguard called Hank, and a nosy neighbour blow things wide open.
They certainly do. What an ending. What an episode. Really, really interesting one. As usual, I'll mention, if this is your first time joining us, the way we cover our episodes is that we take our top five points each, discuss those top 5 points, and hopefully amongst those cover everything about the episode that we want to talk about. Chris, do you want to kick us off with your first point?
Yeah. So as I kind of briefly mentioned when we were just summing up our initial thoughts of the episode, I really wanted to give it out to Scott on this one. He wrote a fantastic episode that really... I hate putting large blanketing themes to episodes, but really this one I kind of got was all about consent, if you want to put it that, because a lot of the themes that came up, such as, and stuff we can discuss later, so I don't do a bit where I give away the whole episode, my first point. The biggest one being kind of, for me, was just how everything revolved around consent. It was whether you had it, whether you didn't have it, whether Kilgrave gave it or didn't give it. And it was quite strange. Kind of everything, a lot of my notes kind of key points back was like, oh, okay, that's another bit of talking about consent. That was another bit talking about consent. So I just thought it was quite poignant. I kind of get the feeling I'm becoming a bit more literate as the weeks go on, because I'm finding these really high-arching story arcs and what the theme is. And I'm hoping Scott will go back and go, damn right, that was what I was aiming for. He probably won't, but fingers crossed. But yeah, no, I just want to see what you guys thought, because it was, for me, very poignant in certain points where it kind of goes, yes, that's literally what the whole conversation was about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of points in this episode, specifically between Jessica and Kilgrave, where he's pointing out the fact that he's allowing people to have control over what they're doing in front of Jessica. So he says he's hired Hank the bodyguard, and that he's paying the 2 workers in the house. He's paying them more money than they would have had in their previous jobs. So they're there almost by choice, kind of, sort of, until some other consent issues that he has a little bit later on.
Yeah, they're also his fail-safe.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that, and obviously the big discussion from the episode about Jessica's attribution of what's happened to her, to essentially calling out Kilgrave as being a rapist and a prolonged rapist of her, is obviously about taking the consent away from Jessica. Yeah, I think you're definitely right. That's one of the big themes in this episode.
Oh, I think the biggest one for me was her choice to go back when she's talking to Trish. And we'll again get into parts of that later, but that was just huge. It's like, what would you do?
Yeah.
What would Trish do? And I was like, oh, they use the episode name in the thing. Sorry.
Yeah.
Every now and again, once they use it, I'm like, I'm hoping for an episode during Luke Cage, his season, first season, called Sweet Christmas. I'm just literally and be like, oh my god, they used the name.
Absolutely, no. We have noticed that all the episodes so far, and I don't know, I think we called it out last week, that all the episodes so far have used the name title of the episode in the episode itself, and this episode is no exception. Kilgrave does ask, what would Jessica do? So yeah, John, any points on that element about consent?
Yeah, I mean, just again that it's hugely important that that's brought up because Alias deals with that as well. Mm-hmm. I think I love the fact that, Jessica is saying almost it's not just sexual rape, it's just control as well. It's the whole baggage that comes around with that about control, consent, and just abuse to an extent, that you're controlling my mind. You're forcing stuff onto me. You're forcing me to do stuff, not just sexually, but just in terms of living. And I think that's a really important distinction that I kind of drew from that as well.
Yeah.
And sort of just mirrored and reflected back on that is to an extent someone there in Kilgrave, considering that he's not done any of that.
Absolutely.
And just through not understanding what his actions are on another person's life and how that is destructive and controlling and abusive. He's going, we went to 5-star hotels, expensive meals out and all that. And she retorts and comes back to that point of, but I didn't want to do any of that. You didn't ask me what I wanted to do. And it's just that sort of ignorance of what he's done wrong in Kilgrave, which I think is another important thing in this episode, to an extent that kind of gives you a bit of strangely empathy with Kilgrave, that he himself was abused and maybe doesn't necessarily understand right from wrong because he never had any moral or value-laden compass growing up. So, yeah, massive themes here.
But actually now, sorry, as we were talking there, it just came into me. Simpson. Mm-hmm. He's going against consent in this episode. He's in the last couple of episodes. He's going against Trish. Trish's consent. He's not asking for consent to do all this stuff.
That's very true. That's very true.
I think this is where they're showing, while Kilgrave is taking away consent through powers, other people will do it just willy-nilly as well. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, it's just a very strong undertone that was there. Yeah,
absolutely. There's the point, you're absolutely right, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago, where essentially Simpson was put in the back seat by Jessica because she was the leader of the attack to take out Kilgrave. And yeah, he's gone completely against their wishes. You're right. He was told he has to sit and take orders from them. He's now gone completely past that and is willing to take out Kilgrave purely on his own terms without anybody's permission. Yeah.
But it's even, Jessica is doing it smartly. This episode, she's all about the smarts. She's trying to record him in a confession situation. She obviously is then seeing that maybe she can do something to help him by just being there and showing him how to be good to an extent. And then obviously then there's the double cross right at the end, the ruse that she kind of does, which obviously we're going to come to. Whereas Simpson, by contrast, is all guns blazing. He is just all about the, let's chuck a daisy cutter at Kilgrave and wipe out this man. He's all about kill, destroy, without any thought of the collateral damage that might occur.
Yeah, he just wants punishment, really, doesn't he?
He really, really does.
Boom, clank.
And the interesting thing with Kilgrave is that even when he thinks that he's not forcing someone like Jessica, he's actually doing it by proxy, by intimidating and threatening the chef and the housekeeper with the razor blades, for example. So he just really doesn't understand it. He's kind of like blind to this whole idea of people's free will to do things that they choose to do. So Absolutely. It's really interesting.
Like he has purple tinted glasses.
Exactly. Oh, nice
Sorry.
one, Chris. Yeah, one of my points is actually about Kilgrave. Not a huge amount of extra to add. But yeah, I just like the idea that Kilgrave brings in around the consent issue. The fact that he's just like, I suppose, almost like you would see in a rape case in a court where the guy doesn't agree that he has been a rapist. He's essentially saying, well, I wasn't, because I took you to all the high-class hotels, as you mentioned, John. I took you to all these places, and Jessica saying to him, well, I didn't want any of that. And his response to her is, but I never know if people are doing what they want to do or doing what I tell them. I never can tell the difference because I have to choose my words so carefully. And I think this was really interesting, and this is the start of possibly an understanding of Kilgrave, which I didn't expect to have at all throughout the series. I understood that he is a guy who's self-serving. I understand that he has these powers where he's able to get whatever he wants, but I didn't really understand that I would start to agree with some of the concepts that he brings in, which is, well, if you were to walk around every day and talk to people and they do everything that you want, how do you know when they're doing what they want and what you want them to do? I think it's really interesting.
And correct me if I'm wrong. In Alias, they never officially come out and say that there was a rape. It's implied in a lot of the writing, but they don't actually say there was actual. When I say rape, I'm referring to physical, which is implied. It's actually full out stated in this episode. Whereas in Alias, was it? I'm trying to remember, and for me, it just seems it was always just implied in the background, like the bit where she says, how would you like it if you had to sleep at the foot of his bed and bend at the knee to him all the time?
Yeah, no, I think it's not explicitly said. I think they were still trying to pull their punches a little bit at the time when the comic book was written, but it's pretty clear. You can read into it pretty easily that essentially she's been made do whatever he wants for her, dressing scantily, all that kind of stuff. So while there's no sex as such shown in the comic book, rape or otherwise, it's pretty. Well, a little bit of sex actually shown in the comic book, but it's pretty deeply implied that what he's doing to her is rape. Of all kinds, I suppose.
I agree with that. I just think they never officially come out and say it. Like, in comparison to this episode, where she calls out both mental and physical.
Yeah.
Against consent, rape.
But I suppose I take the point, but I do like that Kilgrave's answer to her is very much what some of the comic book readers might have been saying as well. But I don't like the word rape. Don't use the word rape. That's not what it was. I was doing everything for you. We were in love, weren't we? Kind of thing. I love that they're having that discussion while she's calling it rape. She is the victim. She is absolutely has been raped. We know this because she's spent a year with him, having sex with him and being under his power. And he's calling out the fact that other people might not interpret it that way. And that's kind of what the comic was trying to do as well. It was trying to set up this idea that you can interpret it whatever way you want to. What Jessica feels is that she's been raped.
Yeah, and Stockholm syndrome. I think I agree with what you said, where you called out whether Kilgrave says that, which is I don't know who does what or when. Is it because of me or my powers? Yeah, that would be pretty hard. And I think that I don't know. This is just for me. It was very like you come down on I think you come down one side or the other, or you come down smack bang in the middle in terms of. Am I leaning towards Kilgrave's kind of response in feeling some kind of feelings there? Or do I just agree with Jessica 100%? Or are you in the middle going, oh wow, this is showing me two sides to a coin, which is really difficult to view?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this actually, it comes to one of my first points, which is definitely, I've kind of said it already, about this empathizing or beginning to understand at least Kilgrave's situation and to what extent maybe that changes how you're viewing him. Because I think not only is consent a huge thing here, but what's thrown up is redemption. Can someone be redeemed for their past actions? And to what extent can you excuse someone for doing stuff to other people that have been done to him? Because basically we get a little glimpse into the Kilgrave family life here. We finally find out what the yellow USB stick has on it. And it's basically that, to an extent, he was abused as a child as well. He was forced into these experiments by his parents. We get the glimpse of that kind of CCTV footage of him doing puzzles all connected up through wires, and you actually see him finally realizing the power that he has within him. You also, I hasten to add, see them doing a spinal tap on a child.
Neck tap.
Where? Well, on the spine.
Oh. Yeah.
Doing that, I've had a spinal tap, sedated, woken up, and the pain, you can feel it. You can feel it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even want to think what that is like with no sedation. And then he says, stop. Like, he's being forced there into a really painful procedure.
Yeah.
So he's kind of been
by his parents as well. Like, they're standing over him, telling him to just lie there and take this, essentially.
So he's been subjected to cruelty, at least, and abuse here. And you do then start to think, well, can you empathize with him? He obviously shows this to Jessica on the USB stick. Quick question, though. I wonder whether there's any more after that. He does talk about how his parents have run away and left promising careers and so on. But it's just the way he closed down the laptop. I wondered whether it was about to show him saying, now jab that in your eye and headbutt one another until, the melons smash open or something.
Right,
Like, did he really just kill them there, like as a massive revenge step?
Yeah.
Because what he was saying, like, he's been on his own since 10.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just, it's almost like a feral child he becomes after he realizes his powers. But does he kill his parents, or have they actually maybe just run away and gone into hiding? Like, I'd love to maybe just see what the rest of that footage shows. That would be really interesting.
Maybe we
will.
will.
Hopefully, but that will be really interesting to see. But again, I just think, you also see him defending Jessica from the neighbor, Elizabeth, the nosy neighbor.
Yeah.
So there's a few things that he does here, even just the fact that he says, I want you to decide, and all that kind of talk that he goes to Jessica with, that, you have to be the one ready to sort of give yourself to me, that we live together.
Yeah.
Whilst it's still with a gun pointed at Laurent and what's her name? Alva. There's still, you feel, is he on his way to redeeming himself, or is he not? I mean, I don't think he is, but you could sense that there. But he defends then Jessica, her honor or whatever, against Elizabeth, but you would kind of expect that. So is he doing good, or is he just, again, being selfish because Jessica is an extension of him in his eyes? So it's not really being altruistic or helpful or protective. It's being more, well, she's having a go at me by having a go at Jessica. And I don't like that. And I won't stand for that, because it's Jessica that essentially tells him to let it go at the breakfast table outside with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really interesting thing, this slow creep into Kilgrave's backstory and trying to understand him.
Well, I like in that scene particularly that Kilgrave is kind of showing off to Jessica, saying, aren't my powers quite interesting sometimes, essentially? And Jessica has to begrudgingly admit that using the powers on somebody that's lying to you could be pretty useful for you. And one other thing I wanted to call out as well, you mentioned about Kilgrave turning on his parents. This really reminded me of something from the X-Men, that essentially under great duress, when his parents are holding him down, taking this spinal fluid from his back, at that point the power comes out. It seems like it's the first time that it's caught on camera, that he says to his parents, step back, and they do, and start going, what are we doing? How did that happen? Does he have control over us, kind of thing? It really reminded me of the kind of a power of a mutant, which they can't talk about obviously on this side of the Marvel house, but it really reminded me of those kind of powers.
Definitely. Now that you say that, I definitely get a sense of mutants here.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. But larger question, is that actually his parents?
Interesting question.
Yeah, maybe, for sure.
So, because it was like Project, in this, the camera, it was like Project 322756. So what happened to the other 32,000 projects?
Interesting.
Is he born this way, or is this through experimentation? So then this does lead into something that I'm curious about more about the kind of children being experimented on in the Marvel universe. There is a lot of them, and I'm pretty sure there's some here and there. Two that spring to mind, which was then Black Widow. And we know that's in the cinematic universe.
Yes.
So, and that was in Civil War, I believe.
It was a little bit in Civil War, but it was in Agent Carter as well, where they talked about Dottie being experimented on as a young girl in Russia. And that's the creation of the project that led to Natasha Romanoff, the Black Widow, essentially. This was the whole team of Black Widows were taken from their families as children and trained to fight against each other and kill each other, essentially, as trained assassins. So potentially this is what Kilgrave's possible parents, I'm doing my air quotes, potentially they're involved in the same kind of project.
Yeah, and I think you definitely have to take what Kilgrave is saying with a large pinch of salt. So again, it'd be really interesting to see that extra footage maybe in that laptop on that USB key. You know, does it pan back with guards coming in and it's actually a completely separate facility? Yeah. Maybe in Russia?
Maybe.
Yeah, the two people were English as well.
They were. Yeah.
That's true.
I don't think it's Project Rebirth. Obviously, that's United States funded. And then, obviously, the Romanovs, that's Soviet Russia. So could this be the British version?
Yeah, it's all the axes of power had some point. Some type of experiments on children or on young people to try and get them as superpowered nations. Interesting. I do want to give a quick pause here to give a shout out to David Wang, right back to our discussion of the trailer for Jessica Jones, where he pointed out that this person that was on screen on October 31st, 1985, is a young Kilgrave, and that we were going to say a bit of the Kilgrave backstory. So well done, David, for catching that in the original trailer. We definitely wouldn't have noticed at the time, or even thought that it could have been. So good catch there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I didn't even catch that in my own head. The larger curiosity I have here is there are two characters that have always been hinted at that may be brought into the MCU, which is Cloak and Dagger.
Oh, yes, yeah. So
there is a story, their comic book story is that they were experimented on as well. Not in the same way. I believe it was some kind of drug, which is heroin and a crack dealer and stuff. Could this be an MCU spin on it? Which is the heroin that they're attempting, and that could be a possible link to Mother Crane and Daredevil.
Oh, yes, because they were making heroin in Daredevil,
they
weren't they?
Certainly were. Yeah, shipping it in.
The blind drug dealers, or the blind drug mules and stuff, yeah.
So could this be, again, there's a large web connecting Daredevil to Iron Fist to Jessica Jones to Kilgrave, the birth of Kilgrave?
That would be awesome.
That would be very
It would be, and literally all we see in the corner, as you said, imagine, do we see more of the video, it pans back, and in the back is the Silk Serpent kind of motif in one of the corners.
And they're experimenting on to create Cloak and Dagger as well, or something like that. Very interesting. Very interesting.
No, before we move on, this was one of my points about Kevin Kilgrave. We do love our alliteration in Marvel.
Yes, we need to talk about Kevin, definitely.
Yes, but I think the empathy part was really where I got it. Throughout this episode, started more and more empathizing with a character who, up until for the last 7 hours, has been distasteful, vile. You shuddered at some of the things he's done. You just feel revolted and repulsed. And yet now we're starting to learn why the way he is, and how sometimes he uses his powers. The neighbor situation is the best example. And I actually was going, I'm empathizing with him. I'm starting to feel like he's a human person and not just a stereotypical bad guy in the corner. We're seeing the reverse Wilson Fisk from Daredevil. In Daredevil, we saw Wilson Fisk become Kingpin, and we saw the backstory and why he became the way he is. Now we've been introduced to Kilgrave, and we're seeing the reverse in that now we're starting to see why Kevin is the way he is, and now how he became Kilgrave.
Interesting.
And now we're getting, so we've literally gone the other way. So where we really loved Kingpin up, and we love Kingpin, but Wilson, we loved him all the way up, and then when he became Kingpin, he became a bit stereotypical. Now we started with a stereotypical vile person, and now we're revealing layer by layer, and you're going, oh, interesting.
Absolutely. But I still think there's the question of, can we still believe him, or are we being manipulated by him through the script? I wonder. Because that's the same. I had kind of similar point about the empathy there, and you really do start to go, oh, well, he was abused, he's sticking up for Jessica and all those points. Absolutely. But is he doing that for show? He's saying Hank, the bodyguard, is actually paid. I'm not controlling him. He even talks about how you don't appreciate how difficult this power is, because I have to be really careful about what I say to people. And I mean, one of those things is just that, does he mean that? And that's the whole thing that's still there at the back of my mind, is, does he mean that? And I think then as well, coupled to that, you have this arc of Jessica considering seriously, or at least we're being led to believe again from her actions, about maybe helping him to redeem himself, to become good, and so on. But I think as well, just if I can include one of my other points here, is that the flag for me, even though I found the third sub point, I suppose, that I'm going to talk about here now, I found it actually quite amusing. I thought it was quite funny. All the way through this, you have how he treats Laurent and Alva, to realize that he's still pretty obnoxious. But I must say, I really felt for poor Laurent, the chef, and Alva, the housekeeper. I mean, we have the close shave, their, razor blades at the neck.
Oh, yeah.
You have essentially the flayed man and woman, where he says, if not back in 2 hours, you start peeling one another's face, the skin off one another's faces, where you're like, oh my goodness, okay, Ramsay Bolton has got nothing on this guy. And then finally, and this is the thing that made me chuckle, just the fact that they were on the sofa looking out the windows and they were being told not to blink, and until Jessica returns. And I mean, the poor faces on them. I mean, poor Alva just looked like she had this smile, but it was a smile of absolute pain and agony, and she couldn't
the relief when Jessica arrived. Yeah.
It was just this idea of being told not to blink. I can't even imagine that, actually.
Absolutely, and guess what we have here? If you haven't noticed, and I think some of our Whovian fans might have noticed it, the Doctor is telling two characters not to blink, just like he did. Just like he did with the angels, in Doctor Who. So, absolutely. A nice little trait there. So the Doctor tells you not to blink. Once again, this could be the Doctor. He tells you not to blink, just like he did.
Evil Doctor theory.
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. But I must say, another quick shout out for someone behind the scenes of Jessica Jones, the casting director, or the casting person behind bringing in the actress who played Alva. Wow, I felt so sorry for her from the second she walked on screen. She's not even the one that gives the explanation that she's happy with the job because she gets doubled her pay and was fired from her previous job for drinking. She gets nothing here. She gets to stand in the background and look terrified at every single moment she's in Kilgrave's presence. She's fantastic. Yeah. She gets hardly any lines at all, but I think, as you say, that moment of relief when Jessica arrives back in the taxi, it's, oh my God, she's here, I can blink, and then she rubs her eyes. It's fantastic, but really good job by the casting director.
Absolutely. And I think one of the other things, just really great line coming from Kilgrave, relating to the conversation that, Laurent is being paid double what he was paid previously from a job that he was fired because of an alcohol problem. Obviously, that kind of resonates with Jessica. And Kilgrave goes, you see, some people give others a second chance. And it's a real neat little bit of dialogue, which I loved. But I must say, I really liked Alva and Laurent in this. I thought they were a great little foil to show just really still how twisted he is. He will do anything for Jessica, but put on his own. And in fairness, he says it himself, he may not act good, like Jessica would want him to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Just taking a little bit of Chris's point and a little bit of yours, John, on to my next point. Do I empathise with Kilgrave here? I really think Scott Reynolds has done a great job of writing this, because what we saw in Daredevil And I love the episode, don't get me wrong, but what we saw in Daredevil was a flashback to Wilson Fisk as a child killing his father because he felt he had to, because his father was abusive. And that's the point we empathized with Wilson Fisk. Yeah?
Yep.
That's the moment when we realize you must empathize with this character. What I love that Scott Reynolds did in this episode is before we get to see any of the flashbacks to Kevin as a child and what happened to him, we have the scene with Jessica saying, "You're a rapist. You raped me." And he blames his parents for it. He says he came from a house that had no love in it. When you were playing ball in your front garden with your parents, I was being tested on and experimented on by my parents. And Jessica calls him out immediately. She says, "You're saying you rape people because you didn't come from a loving home. My parents are dead. You don't see me raping anybody." So I like how it's written because it is essentially saying to you, don't fall for his charms. Don't fall for his excuses and reasons behind what he did. He's got a power and he's using it for evil. Whereas we see from Wilson Fisk that he grew up in a bad environment and took his opportunity and then turned into a person who will take every opportunity. Here we just see Kilgrave as a person who will be very vindictive about it. And one of the points in the episode, other than this, which I really liked, is essentially, you mentioned a couple of times Elizabeth Del Luca, the neighbor who comes over. Really another show of Kilgrave and what he's really capable of. She comes over, she tells Jessica that she always knew something bad was going to happen to her parents. Kilgrave turns it on her, makes her tell the truth, essentially exposing the fact that she wants to feel power over Jessica still. It makes her feel powerful, makes her feel needed and better as a person. And how does he punish her for this? Yeah, so the big punishment for Elizabeth is that she carries a bomb which blows her to pieces. She's sent in as a suicide bomber by Kilgrave for essentially embarrassing Jessica in front of him, which I think once again shows you the kind of person Kilgrave is. He's not just telling her to go home and shut up and never tell that story again. He tells her to carry a bomb to kill Simpson later on in the episode. Kilgrave is still deplorable to me by the end of this episode, even though he may have given some explanations to Jessica.
Exactly.
And a great job by Scott Reynolds on doing this.
Exactly. But it is also that point that you would bring up in any kind of judicial system of, can someone who is bad be redeemed? And if so, should society let them? And I think that was one of the other big elements of this episode,
Absolutely.
which is what this is feeding into. And you're quite rightly, he's still being deplorable, but there are reasons for that. Does that allow you to empathize? Does that allow you to at least understand? Does that allow you to say, well, maybe we can feel something for him to try and make him a better person, to understand that what he's doing is deplorable? And we see that through the lens of Jessica.
Yeah.
And it's about this idea of people being given a second chance and whether they should be or not. I suspect in this case it will be no, we shouldn't. However, I think that's the theme, and I think that's the theme
Absolutely.
of prison, jail, a court system, and I think that's as much plays into the issue of consent, rape, and abuse as well.
Yeah.
When do you stop, in a legal sense, allowing people to play out their sentence, but maybe be released back into society to live a normal life if they've been rehabilitated?
And I, you're absolutely right. I do love that we get presented with his version of events, his justification for what he does, and Jessica's reaction to it as well. It's not in a vacuum, so it's not the kind of conversation we had when we all sat down to discuss the Wilson Fisk episode of Daredevil. At that point, it was very much, oh, okay, well, that's why he's the way he is, because of how his father treated him as a child. And then he grew up in a different environment and continued on that way. With Kilgrave, I love that they've presented both arguments at the same time. So you can kind of choose your side almost.
Absolutely.
Like Civil War.
Or is he just a sociopath or a psychopath? That,
But a larger question, okay? So if we're led to believe that he, at the age of 10 in 1985, develops his powers, kills his parents, and disappears. He's a 10-year-old with superpowers to control anyone, no guidance. So we know he's 40 in this. But then that's 30 years of walking the streets of the world with no boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
No boundaries, no one telling you what to do. If someone tells you what to do, you tell them what to do. And they do it. You don't have to do it. Like, this is like Never Neverland, Peter Pan, like the child who always stayed young, the bad boy who acts out. So I'm actually starting to, that's what I think. Yes, you said it's a civil war. It's like, which side are you on? Mm-hmm. Team Kilgrave good or empathy, or no, he's still deplorable.
I'm somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's where I am as well. I'm going, I can see the badness, I can see the goodness. I can see the bad and I can see the good. Mm-hmm. This character, the empathy is more coming from perhaps because he had no structure, no guidance, which Jessica offers. Mm-hmm. She shows him the power of perhaps being good. And you see the euphorism that comes out when he, after saving a family, and he's like, look at how great that feels. Mm-hmm. Like, that is perhaps something you are meant to consider. Like, that is something Scott and Simon was like, could we put, even if it's not 100% true, and there is all this thing where we're getting played as an audience.
Yeah.
Is that even something that you are able to feel? And then that shouldn't be the way you feel. Like, that is where it comes down to Scott and Simon doing something fantastic, where I came away after 7 hours of hating this character, not hating the character portrayal or anything, but hating the
Kilgrave. Yeah.
Like, thinking how despicable he is. Going, oh, okay, I kind of think I empathize and get where he's coming from and why he is the way he is. Mm-hmm. Not saying the acts he could have done can be written off, because he still blows someone up at the end.
Yep.
He still raped people. Mm-hmm. He still did many other do not blink for the next 2 hours. Yeah. That's probably worse than killing someone.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I think it raises a question, and it's to purposefully to mirror Jessica's story of rape and abuse, that someone else who is raped and abused and goes on to do bad stuff, can they ever be rehabilitated? Is it a system that we live in that you are given time to rehabilitate and are allowed to then, once you've been determined, from professionals that you are no longer a risk to society, can Kilgrave ever be that? I still think he's got a long way to go, definitely. But these are the interesting questions that this throws up, is that, he's still blowing people up at the end. He's treating Laurent and Alva really badly. But he's been contextualized a bit, but it's through his lens. So we're still to determine whether maybe he's actually telling the truth, or he is actually a psychopath that needs to be behind bars for the rest of his life.
Absolutely. And after listening to all of the podcast Serial this week, which is about this kind of topic, I'd love to see all three of us in a jury at some point. Because I don't know how we would be able to convict someone like Kilgrave or not with some of the evidence that's been presented. But I'm going to jump straight into my next point, because this whole episode is a two-hander with Jessica and Kilgrave, really. It's all about their story. And I'm really calling this scene, this section of the episode, the Marvel team-up. A huge fixture of Marvel Comics for years was the team-up between sometimes a villain and a hero. And what we get in this episode is Kilgrave and Jessica teaming up for one purpose, which is to free the hostages. But I'm coming at it from a slightly different perspective than I think you guys might be coming at it from. Did you notice throughout the episode, the hostage situation is being shown on televisions in the home of Kilgrave and Jessica? I think Kilgrave set the whole thing up, right? This is a husband of a family of 3 kids, I think 2 kids and his wife, who are sitting in the house. 3 kids, is it?
She said 4 people.
That's right. So you have the wife. Oh, no.
You consider the husband.
Yeah. So it's possibly two kids and a wife, and definitely himself anyway. But I think the whole point is Jessica wakes up in the morning and this news story is on screen about a husband taking his wife and kids hostage. That's a very Kilgrave suggestion to have happened, that he's been told to take his family hostage. They're crying, don't understand why he's done this. The police are all around. He knows that Jessica's going to react to this, seeing it on television, and know that his power could be used to save them. I think this might have been a twist by Kilgrave to try and get Jessica to team up with him and show her what she could do if she chose to live with him. Yeah? Because he seems pretty convinced that she's going to choose him. Knowing what they've done, knowing what he's done to her over the previous year, he still seems pretty convinced about what choice she's going to make. Even though he does know that she doesn't love him, he knows that she's been treated really badly by him. So why would she choose to come back to him? But if he creates this unmissable chance to have a hero by her side that she and only she can control, then she's obviously going to make that choice, isn't she?
That's a huge theory. I never thought about it that way.
I hadn't thought of that theory, I have to say. But I also wondered whether this was a ruse, again, that leads ultimately to the double cross that Jessica does on Kilgrave. So maybe it's both ways. Maybe she decides to use this to try and say, look, Kilgrave, here you go. This is my bargain to you. I will stay with you, but you have to promise to be good.
Absolutely.
He buys into that. And ultimately then she does the whole kidnap of Kilgrave. You know, she injects him again, brings him Chinese, drugs Alva and Laurent. I mean, my God, this poor couple are having a god awful day. They probably wake up thinking, what on earth is going on? So his plan, if that's the case, leading up to that point, has backfired on him, because Jessica has gone on it and reversed it on him. And I mean, again, it's a great ending because of that double cross that Jessica does.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't expecting it. I actually thought, oh my God, this is what's going to happen. She is going to try and attempt to change him, and that there's going to be, you know, Trisha there who's just going to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
There's going to be Simpson there who's still trying to get at Kilgrave. You know, we see him in kind of full SWAT outfit with two other men. Marines really armed up to the hilt again to take down Kilgrave. He's the one that planted the bomb previously in the basement. Again, no idea of collateral damage here. And so this could have been the future for these two characters. And that's how I kind of thought it was going to play out. And that's where the tension was going to come from. And then it all gets spun on its head. And it was fantastic for that.
Absolutely. And can I just call out Christian Ritter's performance in one specific moment of this episode? Absolutely loved the turn phrase that she gives when they get back after saving the family. And she says to Kilgrave, that's what you do. That's how you become a hero. Look how many lives you saved. And he goes, well, I was going to make that guy blow his head off. And I would have, because that's what I absolutely believed was the right thing. And Christian Ritter's performance when she turns around and goes, oh God, yes, you did, didn't you? You did. That's exactly what you would have done, because you are the villain, essentially. In your head, you absolutely would be going around just offing people and killing everybody and not knowing what's wrong with that. I love her performance. I love how she carries that off, because she's just in that moment where she realized she's put herself between a rock and a hard place. She's just shown this guy what he can do with his powers in a good way, but will now have to instruct him for the rest of her life. I love that moment, because it does play into how the episode ends, where she's essentially going, well, can I give up my entire life? Can I decide to just be the babysitter for this guy that has an amazing power and can be focused to become the hero? Or do I basically trap him and kidnap him? And yes, she chooses to kidnap him.
I actually would have liked to see another episode. So a 14th episode that or an extension of this episode where they do more.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to see what else they could, rather than just the kind of hostage. So they they go into the grocery store and there's a robbery. You see that, or they team up in some other way. I think that could have been an additional 30 minutes of fun.
Yeah,
you could have got fights and see Kilgrave, like Jessica beating up a group of 30 thugs, and then Kilgrave turns around and goes, you fight you, you fight you, you fight you. That would have been brilliant.
Absolutely. I'd love a new theme tune with Purple Man and Jewel team up to save New York. I think it would have been cool.
It would have.
But I love that that's the impression that they are putting in your head, that they go, you know what, this team up would be great. It would be cool to see what a person of that power working for good could be like. And then they just take it away in 2 minutes. It looks like they have a lot of other things to cover in this series, if they took that possibility away that quickly. Because you're right, they could have lived together for even just a week and have her control what he does and learn that he actually does have bad intentions a lot of the time. But she doesn't even entertain it. She does it once, goes off and talks to Trish, comes back, knocks him out, sticks him over her shoulder and takes him off.
And you know,
amazing.
flies away.
Flies away, very important.
Yeah. But as well, is it is that what Jessica did, or was it what Trisha decided, or what she would have done? Because she's there having the conversation with Trish, and you don't see the outcome of that. And then she comes back, because Jessica immediately is saying, to live with him, and that she goes, but you would tell me not to do that, not because you don't think it's the right thing to do, but because, we're friends, we're stepsisters. But we don't see the end of that conversation, whereby Trish, who is a smart girl, smart lady, basically might have said, well, we use it against him. We use that. How can we take that absolutely untenable situation that I won't let you get into, and how can we use that, knowing that you can look after yourself, and how can we use that against Kilgrave?
Yeah.
Which to me seems the outcome of what happens. But I didn't see it at the time, and it's only with the whole double cross that you kind of go, well, maybe this is Trisha's plans, and it's what Jessica did,
Yeah, no, I'm actually pretty convinced we're going to see the rest of that conversation.
I hope so.
I'm pretty, they'll do, I'd love to say they open with it next episode. They open with, split screens going, no, Jessica, this is what we'll do. And then they show what happens as she flies off and
That's
puts her away.
interesting. I took it as this is absolutely Jessica's concept, because I think Trish would have told her, I wouldn't want you to do it because you're my friend, but you could definitely survive it. If anybody I know could survive it, you could survive it. And I think that moment of Jessica going, this is what Jessica Jones would do, is her going, this is why I'm the superhero of the show. This is why I'm the central person in the show, because this is the kind of thing I do, which is kind of not really think about the consequences, knock the guy out and lock him up. Nobody would tell her to keep him alive, firstly. You got Simpson basically shouting in her ear going, kill him, kill him. Trish is essentially trying to protect her friend by saying, don't live with him, you shouldn't do that to yourself, but you could probably survive it. And I think Jessica's going, this is what I'd do.
But when you look back at that scene, Trish really isn't saying anything.
Sure.
It's Jessica who's assuming what Trish is going to say if she comes to her with that idea. So does Trish say to her, well, why don't you, but reverse it so that he
Maybe
is taken off guard? Something like that. That's the thing. It would be great to see the rest of that conversation, because you're only being told what you think Trisha will say, and that comes from Jessica, not from Trisha.
Well, this episode has really taken us off our normal point structure, hasn't it? There's so much going on and so much to talk about. It really brought up some huge stuff.
And it's all interlinked as well. It really is a giant ball of elastic bands.
Absolutely. But I think to kind of bring us back onto our final points system, Chris, do you want to give us your last point?
Of course. As our listeners know, I love to pick out Easter eggs.
Yes.
I'm going to go with the obvious one first. Of course, as Kilgrave and Jessica are going into the hostage negotiation, Kilgrave goes, go about your business, in a very Jedi way. And even Jessica calls out, that's very Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Absolutely.
And I thought that was brilliant.
Obi-Wan, but cooler.
Yes. It was actually Obi-Wan, but cooler.
Absolutely. Very impressive, especially with Star Wars out around this time. It seems to have landed right in the right week, really, hasn't it?
No, brilliant. The second one for me, and I'm probably missing a few more, but the big one that kind of came out for me was where Kilgrave is talking about his powers, and he goes, I've even told someone to go screw themselves. Now,
imagine that poor guy.
Oh God, and that's the funny part. I'm stretching here. So DC have Vertigo comics, and of that you do have Preacher.
That's right.
And that's Reverend Jesse, who
Jesse
has
Custer,
Jesse Custer. His power is the word, very similar to Kilgrave's. He can tell people, kind of control what they do.
Yeah.
And in one very hilarious scene, I want to say, he tells someone to go screw themselves, and that is a running gag for, I believe, at least 2-3 issues. So that just straight away was like, yeah,
excellent.
The man who can control people's minds and tell them what to do. Oh, here's another one.
Nice. I like that. And there is the Preacher TV show coming next year on AMC, I think, in the US. So quite interestingly, I love how these things play out, because it's quite possible they'll try and use that line, being that the comic was created before Jessica Jones has been around for years. Pretty close, actually, when Jessica Jones' comic was out, but I know there wasn't a Kilgrave line of this type in the comic book.
No.
So people who see both the Netflix Jessica Jones and and Jesse Custer over on Preacher will think that Jesse Custer is robbing the line from Kilgrave. So quite an interesting catch there.
Yeah.
Very good. The only other Easter egg that I caught, obviously, was the one I mentioned earlier on, which was the big Doctor Who Don't Blink one, which I really liked as well.
Yeah, no, they're really good references, definitely. I love the Obi-Wan Kenobi one, but cooler, because that also then reminded me slightly of how Matt Smith would deliver a Doctor Who line as well. Bow ties are cool, you know? So I really kind of thought of Matt Smith there. So yeah, maybe we're reading way too much Doctor Who into this, but it's great fun, actually, to do.
And I know at least one of our listeners absolutely hates Doctor Who, so really sorry. But there's going to be lots more Doctor Who talk before this series is out, definitely. John, do you want to give us your final point?
Yeah, it was the bloody bedroom scene where Jessica is dreaming, hallucinating, whatever, in conflict from Kilgrave's possible powers or something, where she's taken back to her childhood, and all of a sudden, you know, there's her brother there telling her to get up, you know, we're going off on our trip. The parents are there, and next thing it's just the blood all coming from their eyes and from their forehead and so on, and they're increasingly just looking all bloody, and it's your fault, Jessica. And then she wakes up and snaps out of it, and it's just all these flashbacks that occur that kind of hint and ultimately show Jessica's origin story here, where she's involved in a car crash, which we then also see is to an extent because her father is distracted because of Jessica and her brother having an argument over a Nintendo Game Boy, and it was just all of those things, but was like really good to give her background at the same time as giving insights, or at least Kilgrave's insights into his background. And for me, the one that stood out was just the bedroom scene, because obviously a mother and a father and a brother all being covered in blood, saying kind of like, it was your fault, Jessica. You know, it's the guilt that she's living with from that accident, that she was the only one to survive. So it's like a survivor's guilt.
And
you know?
Make it goddamn right is essentially the final word of that vision, I suppose. One of the things I really liked about this is really that we haven't seen this before. We haven't seen Jessica have visions of her family before. It's kind of shown to me, maybe I'm wrong, but it kind of shows to me that this is about the house. Kilgrave has gone out of his way turning the house into exactly the way it was in 1995 when the accident happened. 1994, 95. If I looked at the posters on the wall, they're essentially the posters I had on my wall in 1995 with Nirvana and Green Day and all those bands that I would have liked around that time. It really felt like
you perved on your neighbours as well. With
possibly. But he's made every effort to get down to the meticulous detail of her house, which is obviously the reason why she's having such fervent visions, I suppose, of her family. She probably wouldn't have had those in her office where there's no connection to the family. There's not even a photograph of her parents or her brother in her office. What he's recreated in her home it's almost like a time capsule of what she would have experienced. So no wonder she's woken up to these horrible visions of her family standing over her, pointing at her and saying, "This is all your fault. Make it right, Jessica." Because he's created this really difficult to live in environment for her. But I think it's fantastic. Yeah, really love those scenes.
I'm gonna go against the curve.
Okay.
The crash into the back of a lorry, very Daredevil-y almost. Like, what was the lorry carrying toxic waste? Like, how did she get doused in radioactive material?
That's very true. We didn't actually see the end of the crash, did we? We saw the camera cut just before it hit the truck. So it's possible that something has
again. It felt like she was getting snapped out of her thoughts on it, rather than seeing the full thing. So maybe it was just a regular accident.
But that doesn't explain then how because she said she was. An accident caused her powers when she's talking to Luke.
Now that is something I think we may see more of in the future.
Yeah,
is the rest of the accident.
Yeah, no, and hopefully we do But if they do the doused in chemicals, then I'm calling Daredevil, and I'm like, that's a trope. We have it too much in all of our comic books.
Interesting.
It's like, look at the mutant turtles, for God's sakes. They were doused in chemicals and then became ninjas.
Yes, but that was a reference to Daredevil.
Exactly. Everything is a reference to Daredevil.
I really like it. I like the fact that we might find out what caused these powers. We didn't in the comics, I think, as far as I remember. We didn't actually find out what caused the powers. So I'm interested to see what actually gave her powers. Regardless of what it is, let's see what it is in a couple episodes' time.
I do wonder if they'll do the coma bit though.
Possibly.
Yeah, because if she's in a coma and then the house gets sold off and then she gets put into foster care with Trish. Could be interesting. Could be interesting.
Absolutely.
Derek, what's your final point?
My final point is a little bit out of Jessica Jones. I know, a little bit out of Jessica Jones. Since we're talking about the episode, I wanted to actually connect it to one of our previous podcasts and one of the previous villains of the Marvel Universe. We'll be talking about our poll a little bit later on, but I don't know why it only struck me. We're 8 episodes into the show, and we covered 8 episodes of Agent Carter. The big villain in Agent Carter was Dr. Ivchenko, if you remember our podcast about that, who also had mind-controlling powers. That was his main power. He turned his wedding ring a couple of times and made a suggestion to other people for what he wanted them to do, and they did it. It's really interesting to see that we have a character with such similar powers as Dr. Ivchenko, but all props to David Tennant. I think he's a much, much better character, a much more rounded character within the Jessica Jones TV show than Dr. Ivchenko, who was essentially just a villain. He was a very specific villain, did control people's minds. Some of the things he did are very similar to Kilgrave, and that's kind of why I wanted to call out the connection this time. One of the members of the SSR that is killed by Dr. Ivchenko is told to go and have a drink and then walk under the nearest truck, which is the kind of thing that Kilgrave would do. But it really didn't stand out as much as David Tennant's Kilgrave, the people that he murders in these episodes. So I'm wondering, and this is kind of my final point, I'm wondering, is there a connection between Ivchenko, who was left alive at the end of Agent Carter, and Kilgrave and his powers?
Oh, I like that. Yeah, no,
Maybe. But remember,
nice, it's all
they are similar, but I don't feel they're the same. And what I mean by that is you get much more of the feeling from Ivchenko, from Agent Carter. And maybe it's just because in terms of that theme of mind control, they can't go to some of the places that they can in Netflix. Mm-hmm. But it seems much more that he needs significant time with that person to bend them to his will, that he is more the power of suggestion rather than absolute mind control. It's almost like a hypnosis thing with Ivchenko, whereas with David Tennant, it's just purely snap immediately with the power of his speech, where he can control them. Hence the Obi-Wan Kenobi reference, where it's an instant. He immediately infiltrates into the mind of the person he wants to control. With Ivchenko, he had to spend much more time with Officer Dooley, for example, and even with the guy he sends under the bus to be able to bend their will. Oh, that's how I kind of took from it.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm wondering, is there a connection? Because that would be 60 years of advancement by potentially Hydra.
Damn it.
Yeah.
That was literally what I was going to say.
That's
it's like,
true.
phase 1 is Ivchenko, phase Infinity is Kilgrave, or the final phase.
Or 3000.
Or Project 335764 is Kilgrave.
322756.
I never get the numbers right.
There's a lot of people that have been thrown into the mincer.
Yeah.
And there you go. That's my little theory coming out of Jessica Jones, that there is a connection between JJ and our favourite Peggy Carter. There you go. Right, so I think that's our 5 main points about the episode. Chris, do you have any notes for this episode?
The only one for me is the fantastic scene where Kilgrave is texting Hogarth.
Oh, yes.
That was brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Bitches be crazy.
Bitches, right? Yeah. I love it.
I was just like, that was just fantastic. I was just like, question mark? Yeah. I was like, okay, so this is, we're going to have some interesting point. I would like to see that expanded a bit more. Mm-hmm. Kilgrave going up to Hogarth's ex and going, tell me your dirtiest secret. And then we literally have that. I'd be like, oh.
That would be really good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Kind of leads me to my note, which was just about Wendy and Hogarth. Just the fact that essentially this shows using Jessica Jones for bad intentions doesn't work out, because the whole reason why Wendy now wants 75% of Hogarth's business is because Hogarth used Jessica to threaten her. If she hadn't used Jessica to threaten her, she never would have gone for 75% of the business. She may have gone 50-50. She specifically says, up until the point that Jessica met me in the subway station, I was willing to believe there was a way back for you, that you haven't turned evil as such. Until I saw that, at that point, that's it. It's over and I want everything.
But why, when she's writing a really threatening email, she uses font 42 in red? It's like, come on, you could say the exact same thing in little small black letters. Just, no, I'm going to blow it up and take over half the size. So in case someone is filming Hogarth reading it, they can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe she was trying to tell the building opposite.
Big flashing letters one by one.
Definitely. I love that scene, though, where they're sat across the table. I mean, it's unfortunate that Pam had to come in as well. I mean, like, Pam
She's
is such
everywhere,
a
isn't
nightmare.
she?
Like, excuse me, like, you are actually probably the reason for this whole meeting at the moment. You don't come in and say, there's a text for you.
Yeah.
There's some things you can just leave behind for a bit. But
I do again really like the actress who plays Pam. I think she's
I
did a great job.
do.
But I love that she's on the periphery the whole time. They're in a glass office while they're talking about their divorce, and Pam's hovering around the outside. Like, how much can you rub it in the face of your former partner that your new partner is standing outside looking gorgeous in her flowery dress?
I was going to say.
And I love the contrast at the table. You know, Wendy is kind of distraught. She's got red eyes. Looks like she's been crying.
Maybe she's the villain with the red eyes. No.
Maybe. And then Hogarth is kind of like pale, cool, just really collected.
Oh.
Like, they're both like opposite sides of the coin.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The woman, absolutely. The people that are doing the makeup on Wendy, my gosh, we see the photograph of Wendy in happier times with Hogarth, and she looks beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But she does look like she's been working 24 hours a day and crying her eyes out as well, all the way through work for the last, couple of weeks that it's been since she broke up with Hogarth. She looks terrible when she's in this meeting at the divorce lawyers. Whoever's doing the makeup on her, again, another behind the scenes shout out for them as well, doing a great job.
Big time.
John, do you have any final notes about this episode?
I have loads of notes on this. I shall quickly run through them. Firstly, Reva, we kind of hear from Kilgrave where he says to Jessica, I didn't ask you to kill her, I asked you to take care of her. And you were the one that took that to mean kill her. Now, maybe it's just semantics, and maybe he did, obviously. It's an interesting thing that I think that was drawn out there, that we will maybe get to see expanded on in future episodes as well. But that was an interesting take on what he said. But he says that a lot, I think, does Kilgrave. I mean, he does say, you can't blame me for your drinking problem, while she's chugging the wine at dinner time. And
nice
that was
Merlot with the
exactly.
That's
awesome.
That was one of my other
Gigantic
points.
glass.
Yeah, that was one of my other points. It was definitely wine with dinner, or a dinner of wine.
Yeah.
What is it that you want, liquid or solid? Jessica plumping for the liquid. And speaking of that, we also have another whiskey watch here in Trisha's apartment. I have no idea what brand of whiskey that is. It certainly looked expensive. A big bottle.
Must have been a Glen something, right?
Possibly. I have no idea. Big bottle, looks kind of hexagonal or octagonal in some way. Really big, expensive, and just knocked back by Jessica. No care in the world as to how expensive it might be. It might as well have been the cheapest brand of bourbon or something like that. Just clunk down. So we have a lot of drinking here from Jessica.
Absolutely. And can I ask a really quick question? I know we're on the end of our notes here. Really quick question. I think part of Jessica Jones' power is that she doesn't get hugely drunk on the alcohol, or doesn't get drunk as quickly as the rest of us would. Does she have that similar kind of thing as Captain America does, that he can never get drunk, he can never imbibe alcohol, which was mentioned in the first Avenger?
Yeah, it's the accelerated healing.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think there's something to do with that?
One of her, I think.
Because she knocks back that wine at the table.
Big time.
Wow.
Ask for another bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think there is the accelerated healing in Paris. Now, it means they probably have to have brought this in for this to be that hard drinking and walking and talking.
Now, don't get me wrong, she is a mess when she drinks a lot of alcohol.
But when she drinks a lot, enough to kill someone human, is Jessica Jones like, I'm just a bit tipsy.
Yeah.
Then my two final points are, I love the jibes, the Bob jibes between Kilgrave and Jessica in this. You know, I think Kilgrave goes, it's rough being your friend, isn't it? As, you know, she kind of lays out this path of like utter destruction around her as a result of Kilgrave, but he kind of completely steps back from it all and says, wow, it's rough being your friend, isn't it? And then obviously great line from Jessica Jones later on in the episode where she goes, the first step in heroism is don't be a prick, as she's trying to, or we think she's trying to convert him.
Yeah.
So I love the barbed jibes back and forth and the sarcasm going on between these two. That was really good. And then obviously, is this what turns Will Simpson to Nuke? We've talked about this, but obviously the big explosive finale to this episode. Poor old Liz, blown to smithereens. I think her arm or leg, whatever, was still twitching.
Her arm was on fire, wasn't it? Yeah.
Nice bit of roast pork going on there. But, Simpson looked pretty out of it. After that explosion, he was knocked clean off his feet. Is this what ultimately moves him to a different area of his life? Is he now this absolute vengeful monster? Is he Nuke? Who is he? What's going to happen? Is he dead?
You see the glass sticking out of his body as well on the ground. Yeah, he's looking pretty pained.
Oh, God.
And on that awful joke, Chris.
Fantastic joke.
My last note, finally, is because I had mentioned, was Simpson under Kilgrave's control? Was he maybe the owner of the security operation that's looking after him? Because there were a few things that were a bit suspect about how he was behaving. I can honestly say I don't think that's the case after this episode.
Yeah, I think it's quite possible. A bomb underneath the house, going around to shoot him in the head and bring the pipe hitting homes with him, I think, as they say in Pulp Fiction.
He's definitely got an obsessive personality.
Mm-hmm.
And last, but not least, Jessica can fly.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Didn't just jump in this episode. She flew away with him. Did she just fly?
Did she just fly? I like that. They still pose the question, though.
And did they take out Hank, the bodyguard?
Oh, yeah.
Was he shot, or
They shot him and kicked him in the face to knock him out. So,
because that's so much better?
Yeah.
okay,
It's
I'm
like
not saying
shot in
this.
the leg versus shot. Yeah, okay, no.
Yeah, so I don't think he's dead. And on those many points, Chris, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
I do. I defend this episode majority because the writer and director made me empathize with a character who, in any other TV show, who in any other book, in any other play, you would not. This shot for shot, line for line, was directing you to think one particular way, or at least to question motives, question nature versus nurture, question background. Is your environment a cause for you? If you do not have a particular thing in your environment, can you be blamed for the way you are? And that's just aside from all the other fantastic points and things that we saw in this episode, that's when you know you're watching something special. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that every episode of this show is that, but I think this episode did something that a lot of shows find hard to do, which is try and be morally upright without throwing it in your face and just making you question, okay, if you had Kilgrave's powers and you didn't have a family and you were experimented on and then were sent into the wild at 10 years old, which we believe to be the case at this point, would you think that everything Kilgrave does is bad? There you go. So yes, I defend.
And John, do you defend this episode of Jessica Jones?
I certainly do defend this episode of Jessica Jones. I would give this 4.5 explosive neighbours out of 5. I think, very much like what Chris said, this was a fascinating episode. It was creepy in the fact that you have this guy, Kilgrave, trying to replicate Jessica's childhood home. Mm-hmm. And then you have all this ambiguity. On the one hand, he's trying to allow her to make a decision, but is holding the threat, if she doesn't, over other people's head. And I loved the chef and the housekeeper, Laurent and Alva, as that foil, where you really see, and along with Elizabeth, the neighbour, you see his inherent evil still at play there, despite all these other questions flying around as to, oh, well, he was abused as a child as well, and he has grown up without a moral compass, knowing right from wrong. You see this sort of etched on Jessica's face. You see how she leaves to go and talk with Trish after they've had this an attempt to try and make him do something heroic or something good. That it's almost like she realizes she is the only one that maybe can keep him on the straight and narrow, and whether, in fact, she can even do that. She realizes the sacrifice she would have to make or the enormity of it. All of this is like great, and it's all baggaged up in these then even bigger ideas of consent, of can someone progress and move on from being a bad person and be redeemed and rehabilitated. All of this stuff, absolutely amazing. And then on the side, you have potentially Simpson being reborn from that explosion as someone maybe better or worse or the same, who knows, or dead. I mean, what is he going to be after that explosion, after that damage? And then obviously we just see Hogarth being ever more desperate to essentially rid herself now of her ex in Wendy. She wants to put Wendy away. If she didn't want to do that already, she's asking Jessica to really find something on her, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays on. So really good. I absolutely love this episode, from creepy to ambiguous to thought-provoking. Really good. And of course, the origins and backstories being further developed as well. So it had so much going on.
So Derek, do you defend this episode?
Oh, wow, what an episode. I stupidly made a comment after episode 6 saying this is my favourite episode of Jessica Jones. I loved the flashbacks that happened in that episode. Why did I make that comment that early? There's so many. This just delivers the hits. It's like episode 7 was brilliant. Episode 8 is brilliant. I love where they've left episode 8 and what's going to happen in episode 9. Really looking forward to it. And I've loved this podcast discussion, this particular discussion about this episode. I know the editor's cut of this would probably be about 20 minutes long, but the director's or producer's cut of this podcast would probably be about 2.5 hours. We could all sit here and talk about individual elements of this episode for hours. I loved it. I love how it was put together. I love how it was written, directed. I've talked already about the casting of some of the background characters, the makeup I've talked about for one of the characters and how she's been made up for the episode. I absolutely loved it. I couldn't defend this episode more. It's fantastic. And again, I call out great writing by Scott Reynolds. Delighted to have a writer of his caliber on board writing a really good episode. 100% defend this one.
Absolutely. And with that, let's move on to the feedback.
Yeah. I think our first feedback is on our poll results so far. We opened it out, or Chris opened it out to everybody to tell us who their favourite Marvel villain has been. So we put it out on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google Plus, and got a couple of responses here. So just want to quickly run through the ones that I put out as choices for villains in the Marvel Cinematic or TV universe. So we had Kilgrave from Jessica Jones, Wilson Fisk from Daredevil, Loki from Thor, and obviously the Avengers, Grant Ward from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., with the Winter Soldier from Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Ultron from Age of Ultron, Ronan the Accuser from Guardians of the Galaxy, Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man, Dr. Ivchenko from Agent Carter, and then obviously left it open to our listeners to come back with any more they could think of. I think I covered them all off.
Yeah.
All right, so results from Facebook is Kilgrave is pretty much a far and away runner, I think, with about 4 times the number of votes. We did get votes for Wilson Fisk, for Loki, for Grant Ward, and for the Winter Soldier himself.
Nothing for Ultron.
Nothing for Ultron. No, nothing for Ultron.
Yeah, unfortunately, they gave him the Fisher-Price download, I think, really, for his scariness.
All right. But Rebecca Brodeur commented it saying, Kilgrave until possibly Dormammu, John?
Absolutely, I'm totally with you there. And even Mordo, I love Baron Mordo's kind of, he's the evil Doctor Strange. I love that kind of reflection on Stephen Strange's character. Dormammu, yeah, big bad. I mean, seriously big bad. I loved one of the recent arcs where he is behind the scenes controlling Hood there in New York.
It was in Siege, wasn't it?
Yeah, I loved that backstory, how Dormammu can come in and control other people in the mortal realm, but obviously then, the gloves come off in the astral plane and the mystical realm, and he has to fight Stephen Strange or the Sorcerer Supreme.
Yeah, but that one doesn't count because that's a future villain, so it doesn't count in this poll.
No.
If he is featured in Doctor Strange, we will definitely include him in a future poll. But for this time, unfortunately, he's not included, so Rebecca went for Kilgrave. Ronaldo says, hard to go past Kilgrave, even though he's the newest villain. Grant Ward is a close second for him. I'm delighted I put Grant Ward in there. Grant Ward from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has become a fantastic villain since the first season.
Yeah, and certainly after the last episode. Oh my goodness. Was it episode 10 of this season, season 3? Cool.
Absolutely, but I even thought the opening to episode 9, what happens at the start of that, no spoilers if you haven't caught up on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but the opening of episode 9 is the moment that Grant Ward turned into one of the best villains on TV for me. Over on Twitter, Kilgrave came out first as well. 57% of the vote went to Kilgrave. We threw out just the TV villains over there. Kilgrave, Wilson Fisk, Grant Ward and Ivchenko. Wilson Fisk got about 30% of the vote. Grant Ward, a very low 9%. And Dr. Ivchenko got 4%. So I think that might have been one vote of everybody. Sylvie Carbonneau says, I had to think twice about this one, but in the end, Kilgrave is the hardest one to defeat. And just like everything Google does, a very different picture over on Google. We have Wilson Fisk got 50% of the vote from just over 300 votes at last count. Wilson Fisk, 50% of people over on Google Plus think he is the best villain. But most of the comments seem to be about Kilgrave. Jordan H. says, Kilgrave, whilst having probably the most out there powers, is still the most relatable. They somehow made us feel empathy for a character so evil as him, which is pretty hard to do. They did it with Wilson Fisk in the past, but he's much better. And Draco Argentum says, all the personality of the 10th Doctor with batshit crazy skewed perspective like Barty Crouch Jr. from Harry Potter. Good points. Thank you very much for that feedback, and that poll will remain open. You can obviously go and vote on that in Google Plus. Just find Defenders TV Podcast, or over on Facebook, just look for Defenders TV Podcast and come and join our group, and you can vote in that poll in case one of your villains didn't stand out in there. All right, so we got some more feedback from Sylvie, a little bit bigger feedback than her little Twitter comment. So I wanted to call this one out. Thanks very much for your feedback. This was sent into feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, just like you can. Sylvie says, hi guys, I've just listened to your review of episode 6. I really enjoyed it. I wanted to add a little something about the Easter egg that Chris mentioned. I almost jumped off my couch when I heard Jessica Jones give Angela Del Toro's name to Luke Cage. Chris is right, she is linked to Iron Fist because of the White Tiger's ambulance. But what you forgot to mention is she is linked directly to Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil. Here's why. Angela's uncle was Hector Alea, the third White Tiger, who died in Matt Murdock's arms right outside the courthouse after being framed for murder and convicted despite Matt's efforts as a lawyer. Later we meet her as the special FBI agent assigned to the Daredevil case, being now in the possession of her uncle's amulets. One night she confronts Matt Murdock. She wants to understand why someone would choose to put on a costume and fight bad people. He then meets her on the rooftop as Daredevil and challenges her so she can feel and test the power of the amulets. After that, when the rumour is out about Daredevil's identity, she realises the FBI director wants to bury Murdock instead of bringing him to justice, but she wouldn't play ball with this idea, so she gets fired and eventually becomes the White Tiger. And this is where we stand in Jessica Jones. We eventually see her in the Murdock Papers, where she comes back to help Matt along with Elektra and Black Widow, but Daredevil pushes her off a roof because he doesn't want her to get involved, thinking that she isn't skilled enough yet to fight against Bullseye. A little wink to Brian Michael Bendis' work that reminds us that Jessica lives in the same world in Daredevil, and it also makes me wonder if Daredevil's secret identity will be jeopardized in season 2. Keep up the good work, guys. Sylvie. Thank you so much for that, Sylvie. Really good to have a little bit of extra expansion on your point, Chris.
Yeah, and to be fair, that I didn't even know half of that. So I'm like, okay, I'm learning something new every day.
Really good, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And one other point there is when Sylvie brings up Bullseye, there was a moment actually in this episode of Jessica Jones when Hogarth goes to the mobile phone after she's just received the email. And in the end, she's texting Jessica. I actually thought she was then going to go, right, this has gone too far. I need to hire a hitman. And she was going to go for Bullseye.
Right, interesting.
Yeah.
I that was just something with that. That came to my mind when I was watching Jessica Jones, that Hogarth had had enough now, and it was end of games. She has to protect herself, her assets, her living, her livelihood. And I thought she was going to go for an assassin, basically.
Very interesting.
And that it would be a sniper, and
Wow.
it would be Bullseye.
We will see, possibly
see.
in a future episode.
Thanks, Sylvie, for that. Definitely. Really good information.
Our piece of feedback here is from Blue Girl. She sent the feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com, just like you can. Her email is titled Episode 6, Steve McQueen. She says, listening to the latest podcast and just wanted to address this bit that you guys discussed. During the Oscar campaign for 12 Years a Slave, I read multiple people also state that Steve McQueen isn't African American, so he didn't have a personal connection to slavery, etc. Just wanted to point out that McQueen's parents are from the Caribbean. So he is in fact a descendant of slave and has slave ancestry. Not to mention that even if his parents were from Africa, he would still likely be a descendant of enslaved or colonized people. People really never acknowledge the modern-day Africans on the continent, also grapple with the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, but that's a whole other discussion. McQueen does bring a perspective to the subject that Tarantino simply doesn't have. To me, this shows in things like the Mandingo fights in Django Unchained. Horrible, horrible moment. That's Derek putting in here. It is simply hysterically inaccurate. This in and of itself is not a problem. However, when doing press for the film, Tarantino spoke about it and some other elements in the movie as if they were real and that he was shining a light on the horrors of slavery that no one else dared to do. That is the part that a lot of black people had a problem with, myself included, not the fact that he made a film dealing with slavery because he's white. I enjoyed Django as a piece of historical fiction or fantasy, like Inglourious Basterds. I've seen it and enjoyed it multiple times, but only as fantasy, so to compare it to McQueen's Making Hunger isn't a fair comparison. McQueen made a film about real events, and it's a great film, but I'm sure even he would have no problem admitting that an Irish filmmaker would bring a perspective to it that he simply didn't have. And I agree with you, it doesn't mean that people can't make films about a culture other than their own, but they should be respectful of the culture in doing so. Thanks very much for that feedback, Blue Girl.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's all about diversity in an analysis of a topic, and it coming from an African American, it coming from a white WASP, it coming from a midtown middle class blue collar worker or whatever is really interesting. And I think those people can all interchange in looking at different topics because they bring a different perspective. Absolutely. And only by having all those varied perspectives, maybe we come to a fully objective assessment or look at that topic.
Absolutely.
It's as they always say, history is always written by the victor. Statehood is always developed by those that have come out on top in the battle for that country, for that parliament, for that state or what have you. And so to have those different perspectives is hugely important. I mean, I think of Downfall, which is a look at Hitler in his final days in the bunker, an amazing film coming from a German director, which we just simply hadn't seen before. Instead, and it's a really interesting take on those final moments of Hitler, for example.
Absolutely.
So it's absolutely something I think is like really important, and I really thank you so much, Blue Girl, for that feedback. It's really interesting. Yeah, I never knew that Stephen McQueen's parents were from the Caribbean, and as you say quite rightly, more than likely to be slaves or colonized as well. And of course, then whose ancestry has come from a background where they were slaves or have been colonized. And I think you're right, that certainly gives an important slant. And in fact, people would argue for the case of Northern Ireland, given, the different political perspectives there.
Yeah, absolutely. And very interesting point. I think, obviously, while we were discussing, we do record a relatively live podcast, so we generally don't have 3 or 4 hours of research on some of the points that we talk about. So picking out people like Tarantino and Steve McQueen are kind of the ones that came to top of mind as people that generally wouldn't be fully in depth with the subject matter they were covering at the time, and would have been seen as people that have a very different perspective on it. Like really, as an Irish person, what we see is Neil Jordan doing films about Ireland and the troubles that we've had over our history. It was really interesting to see a person like Steve McQueen, as a UK person, taking on the story of Bobby Sands in Hunger, in the film that he made. It was really interesting to get that different perspective as a person from England and from London, essentially taking on that movie, rather than it being another Neil Jordan film like In the Name of the Father, which he'd done before. So that's kind of the point we were making. But thanks so much for the feedback on this. Yeah,
and my 2 cents is, I think, Blue Girl, you're completely right. Nothing states that someone cannot make a film about something else, another culture. And as you say, I think it just comes down to making sure that they research the perspectives of that person's or the other culture, if you're not from that culture. And they should be respectful of that culture when doing so. I think where I was coming from in this is, I love that certain directors aren't afraid to talk about hard truths. And I think that's where, again, as Derek, you said, we brought up straight away some just top of mind directors. I think that's the case when a lot of people will think about this straight off. But you're right, there are directors out there who do fantasy fiction, or kind of would be historical fantasy fiction. And you're right, Inglourious Basterds is a fantastic film, but there's no way accurate.
Well, I'll disagree. I think Inglourious Basterds is a terrible film.
No.
That's just me. It's my only film I hate from Quentin Tarantino. Okay. But yeah, it stood out to me as a terrible film.
I love the opening. I think the opening is an amazing bit of tense cinema with Christoph Waltz. But yeah,
and there's one other scene in the film that I do like.
I'm kind of with Derek here. Yeah. I didn't like Inglourious Basterds.
That movie's terrible.
Okay,
but anyway,
using a different example, Band of Brothers.
Yeah.
Very historical. Probably not the most historically accurate in certain scenes. Fictional, historical, somewhat accurate fiction.
Right.
We'll call it that.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the best. This is a very a minefield of a topic. And I want to be very careful. And I don't want to offend anyone.
Absolutely.
I think the key thing is, and what we were trying to get across, and I think also what Blue Girl is saying, a lot more eloquently.
Better than we did.
A lot more eloquent than we did in the podcast, which is basically, if you're going to do a topic, research it, get the other person, the person whose culture or view it directly affects, get their perspective, try it out, and be respectful.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we hope to do when we're talking about it. If it didn't come across like that, I want to apologise, because I did bring up the topic, I think. Oh no, it was John. Blame you.
No, but I think, isn't it amazing that we're here on a Marvel podcast, talking about Jessica Jones, and that's one of the debates in relation to the sexuality of it. Absolutely. That the showrunner is a lady, and the question of whether and how best placed she is to talk about another woman suffering from abuse and potential rape of the body and of the mind, and that conversation blossoms out into a multifaceted kind of discussion, which we're talking again today about redemption and consent and all this kind of thing. These are some really big topics, societal topics. So it's great. It's a really good discussion point. And I think, as Chris said, it's always that we hope to do it in a respectful manner.
Yeah, I think very much the point was just about, obviously how many great versions of William Shakespeare are there out there. And not everybody is from a small town in England who's done a version of William Shakespeare. They've all brought their own perspectives to it. So I love seeing movies and TV shows that may take the same topic, look at it from a different angle and present it to us. And sometimes if you are a person that has gone through that, you can put a very specific perspective on it. It would never have been something that crossed my mind. So I'm really delighted that we're getting to discuss stuff like this, and really delighted that our listeners are getting in contact with us and sending us this kind of feedback. Really enjoying it. So make sure you send in your feedback to feedback@defenderstvpodcast.com. You can share it on our Twitter page over at Defenders Cast, or go to Facebook, join our group. Just look for Defenders TV Podcast and share your thoughts with us there. For this episode of Jessica Jones, I've been Derek, one of your hosts.
And I've been John, one of the other hosts. And thank you again so much for listening, for all the feedback. It's much appreciated.
And I'm Chris, your final host. I feel like I just get to end it out.
Yeah.
Yay! I get to say the last word.
Signing off. Bye.
We'll be back next Tuesday with episode 9 of Jessica Jones. Thanks very much for listening and have a great Christmas.
So from everyone from Defenders TV Podcast, we just want to wish you all a big, happy holidays. Have a great holiday season, whether you're relaxing with family, going off for a hard-earned winter break. Enjoy the time to yourself, with your family, and have a great holiday season.
Hopefully you're having some good time binging on some Netflix shows, including Jessica Jones, and that's why you found the podcast.
And you're binging on us as well, so don't forget there are 38 other episodes that you can listen to. And we got all the way back from Daredevil to some terrible Daredevil film.
Just because you weren't on the podcast.
Yeah, I said, hey, I make it good. I'm sorry.
Exactly. Remember, if you are flooded out, snowed in, or windswept, you can listen to our lovely, soothing tones as the emergency services come to rescue us. Just go to defenderstvpodcast.com/iTunes. Have a great holiday season.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a Flickering Myth Podcast Network production. For more information, head over to flickeringmyth.com for more shows like it. Find this show in iTunes by searching for the podcast name, and head over to youtube.com/flickeringmyth to subscribe to the Flickering Myth movie show. We'll see you on the next podcast. Take care. Bye bye.